that in all our works begun, continued, and ended in you, we may glorify your holy name, and by your mercy attain everlasting life, through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. Almighty God, our Heavenly Father, send forth, we beseech thee, upon thy servants who bear office in this country, the spirit of charity and justice, that they may in all things walk before thee with steadfast purpose and a single heart, and faithfully serve in their several offices, through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. Most gracious God, author of all good things, we humbly beseech thee for the Parliament of Barbados, especially the Senate at this time assembled, that thou wouldest be pleased to direct and prosper all their counsels to the advancement of thy glory, the good of thy church, and the safety, honor, and welfare of our people. All this we ask in the name of Jesus Christ, our most blessed Lord and Savior. Amen. The Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come. Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive them that trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. And may the grace of our Lord Jesus Christ, and the love of God, and the fellowship of the Holy Spirit be with us all now and forever. Amen.
Senate is in session.
Messages from Her Excellency the Governor General. Announcements by Your Honor the President.
I received the minutes of our meeting held on Friday, June 25th, 2021, available for confirmation. Senator.
Mr. President, I beg to move that the minutes of Friday, June 25th, 2021 be confirmed.
The question is that the minutes of our meeting held on Friday, June 25th, 2021 be confirmed. Those honorable senators in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. I think the ayes have it. The minutes stand confirmed. Further announcements, I have excuses for lateness from Senator Grant, Senator Boyce, that is obviously being overtaken by subsequent events. Welcome, Senator Grant. But thanks for giving us the heads up that you might have been late. So Senator Boyce and Senator Walcott will be late, and an excuse of absence from Senator Moore.
Presentation of petitions, presentation of papers, reports from select committees, questions to ministers, requests for leave to move the adjournment of the Senate on matters of urgent public importance, statements by ministers or parliamentary secretaries, personal explanations, motions relating to the business or sittings of the Senate moved by a minister.
Senator McConney.
Mr. President, I beg to move the suspension of Standing Order 45-2 to enable this honorable chamber to deal with the bills, number of bills on the order paper in all of their stages.
The question is that Standing Order 45-2 be suspended for the remainder of today's sitting. Those honorable senators in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it. Standing order stands so suspended.
Introduction of bills.
Senator McConney.
Mr. President, I beg to give notice of the Defense Amendment Bill 2021. of the Grantley Adams International, sorry, one second. Thank you for your indulgence, Mr. President. I beg to give notice of the Defense Amendment Bill 2021. Thank you.
Good.
Mr. President, I beg to move the first reading of the Defense Amendment Bill 2021, and also the Grantley Adams International Airport Transfer of Management and Vesting of Assets. Thank you for your indulgence, Mr. President, as well as the first reading of the Control of Inefficient Lighting Bill 2021 of the Needham's Point Holdings Limited, Exchange and Issue of Bonds Bill 2021, and of the Remote Employment Amendment Bill 2021.
The question is that the bill so mentioned be read a first time. Those honorable senators in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Public business, sir.
Public business is now the order of the day.
Order number 4, sir.
Order number 4.
In the name of the Honorable Minister of Tourism and International Transport, to move the second reading of the Remote Employment Amendment Bill 2021.
Senator Cummings.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I rise on this occasion to introduce the bill for it's entitled the Grantley Adams International Airport Transfer and Management of Vesting of Assets. Remote? Did I use the Grantley Adams?
No, I said remote.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you, Mr. President. I rise on this occasion to introduce the bill on the Remote Employment Bill, which allows for an extension of the existing legislation governing what we anecdotally call the welcome stamp administration and regulatory arrangements that have been in place since last year, July. Mr. President, the legislation entitled Remote Employment Act 2020-2023 allows on this occasion for the welcome stamp to be renewed, the fees to be paid, and for the renewal of the stamp itself for those persons who have been here for the last year. Mr. President, it is no secret to any of us in this honorable place that globally Barbados was very much among the first movers to introduce this item of legislation, but more importantly, to introduce this new product into the market. In comments just recently, Mr. President, I spoke in great detail about the implosion over the last 15 months as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, the implosion in the short stay arrivals for the tourism sector, the impact that this has had on the domestic economy, and the implications as a consequence, Mr. President, for our economic development. What this means, Mr. President, is that at the onset of the pandemic early last year, the government of Barbados made the determination that there was a need, if we were to use the terminology that has become common when we're talking about tourism, to diversify even within the tourism sector, away from pure short stay arrivals into long stay arrivals. But more importantly, Mr. President, in the context of a global pandemic, we found ourselves dealing with a situation where many of our partners, many of our major source markets in particular, were dealing with lockdowns, they were dealing with high infection rates, they were dealing with surging COVID numbers, they were dealing simultaneously with closures and high death rates. And as a result, there were any number of concerns about where in the world could I find to spend and pass this time. We all found, I think certainly those of us who are in public life here in Barbados, that wherever we were, whether we were in our cars, if we were in our homes, if we were in our offices, we were in work mode at all times because we were behind our computers. And equally so, those who took advantage of the welcome stamp made a determination that COVID rates notwithstanding, infection rates notwithstanding, death rates notwithstanding, and lockdowns notwithstanding, they could work from anywhere in the world. And many of them chose to work from Barbados. Mr. President, over the course of the period up until July, approximately 4,800 persons, global citizens, all of them, chose to work from Barbados. That netted Barbados approximately $8 million in fees being generated under the auspices of the welcome stamp. Now, we as a government, notwithstanding the lockdowns of our own, notwithstanding that we could not have anticipated that the COVID pandemic would have mutated, not the virus itself, but the pandemic would have mutated over multiple incarnations over the last 18 months. We could not have anticipated that we would have been affected by a volcano that we did not have, and that we would have been affected by a hurricane that was a tropical storm before us, became a hurricane to hit us, and remained a tropical storm ever since it struck Barbados 2 Fridays ago. We nonetheless had a number of welcome stampers who rode those events out here in Barbados with us. They became part of our families, they became part of our Barbadian architecture, and they became a part of our resilience. They have been among those, Mr. President, that have been bombarding us to say, we have seen this little island go through all kinds of things. When we left where we were and we came to Barbados, we didn't anticipate any of these things either, aside from COVID-19. But we are so proud of the choice that we made because of the way Barbados has handled it. We had an airport closure, for example, Mr. President, where many of the welcome stampers were either meant to travel in or their families meant to travel out, and they stayed here and they were comfortable despite the challenges that were being faced. They rode out the hurricane with us, Mr. President. And perhaps one of the most important and telling stories of those who are among the welcome stamp community is that beyond the 4,800 who chose to stay here for a year, there are any number, Mr. President, of other welcome stampers who came to Barbados and said, you know, let me try this place which I've never been to before for 3 months. Let me try this place for 6 months. And they came, they stayed, they liked it, and they applied for the welcome stamp even before they made the decision to leave their country, or well, after they made the decision to leave their country. There are people, Mr. President, who I've met who have lived in a country, about 6 countries over the last 7 years. They have made it their life's work and their life's business to travel around the world and to work remotely. They have been among those who have called Barbados home. There have been families, husbands and wives, children, who have come to Barbados and they have enrolled in our schools, they have gone to our churches, they've gone to our supermarkets, they send us photos sometimes of interesting products that they find in the supermarket because they have become a part of the community that we call Barbados. They have been among those, Mr. President, aside from those who are in demand on the outside of Barbados who have precipitated the need for not just the extension of this bill, but for the embracing of this product as a long stay, not a long stay visitor, but a long stay in the architecture of our tourism diversification, Mr. President. And I want to take a few minutes to share the forward trajectory for the mechanism that is the welcome stamp beyond this legislation, which, as I said before, will expire on the 30th. Mr. President, I start by saying that the welcome stampers who are here, they have their own community. They have their own Facebook groups, their own social media groups. They share information on where to find everything. They probably know Barbados better than I do. Sometimes when I sit with them or I have lunch with them or dinner with them and I hear their stories, I see parts of Barbados that I didn't know about, but they have been able to discover. They describe places that I never knew existed, Mr. President, but they have been immersed in Barbados. And many of them, Mr. President, have asked us to ensure that despite a pandemic continuing and surges and lockdowns, that despite having to deal with ash outside of their homes and restrictions sometimes on their movement, and despite living through a hurricane here with us, they want to extend their stay here in Barbados beyond this first year. Their stay expires on the 30th of this month, Mr. President, and they want to be in a position to say to their families that their children can enroll in school when the September term begins. They want to be able to have their leases on their houses extended for an additional year because the legislation has facilitated that. And so when we talk, Mr. President, about these people who have come, seen, stayed, and are embracing us, Mr. President, I think the question has to be asked first and foremost, is this an opportunity for us to go even further with the welcome stamp? And certainly from the Ministry of Tourism's perspective and from my own perspective as Minister with responsibility for tourism, it absolutely is. Mr. President, I am reading a book now. It's called Play Bigger. And I'm fascinated by it because it's talking about companies that had first mover advantages, started out with new products or new services, hit the market, did well, but didn't continuously innovate or continuously transform, and so they were taken over by those that came behind them. And so the welcome stamp is a perfect example of one of those things that became the first mover advantage, but has to continuously be innovated in order to ensure that we can play bigger. That we can play bigger in more markets, that we can play bigger and claim a larger share of those markets, that we can attract more people to this market. But here's what is most important, Mr. President. We spend a lot of time talking about the spend for tourism. And so, Mr. President, on an individual basis, we may typically have a visitor who may spend $150 to $250 a day. Some on the higher end may spend $300 a day, USD. But here it is, we have a welcome stamper on a long stay visa who is renting a home on average between $1,500 to $3,000 USD monthly. In some instances, even much higher, because the minimum threshold for them to be able to sustain themselves, Mr. President, is $100,000 a year. You have welcome stampers that I've met, Mr. President, who have decided that they're purchasing real estate in Barbados. I know many of them who have purchased homes in places like Royal Westmoreland, Apes Hill, and in the premier districts in Barbados at the highest end of the real estate market. And so we have translated what would have been a short stay visitor, Mr. President, from $150 to the $300 a day that I mentioned, to someone who is investing millions in Barbados in a single transaction. We have persons whose children are going to schools, who are paying school fees here in Barbados because they're on a welcome stamp. They're renting cars or they're purchasing cars. I have met people, Mr. President, who say, well, with the disruption in travel, we can't exactly travel to shop. So I found a dressmaker. So it's not just on the highest end of the scale, Mr. President. We're talking about ordinary people being able to make money on the basis of long stay visitors here in this country. Dressmakers, I saw one of the ladies, she's visiting from, she's Canadian, but she's originally from Spain. She was wearing a really nice dress. I saw her the other day, and I said, that's a really nice dress. She said, that's the dressmaker I told you about. I found her, and she made this for me. I found the fabric in Bridgetown, and she made this dress for me. At every level of our economy, at every income class, Mr. President, high and low, people are benefiting from this welcome stamp. Taxi drivers are benefiting. Airbnb owners are benefiting. I met another family, Mr. President, who said the wife, the husband, their 2 children were here, but their mothers were also coming with their siblings for Christmas. So a long-stay visitor translates into multiple short-stay visitors because their families are coming to visit them, because they're hearing about these experiences in this place called Barbados. So, Mr. President, this is an important body of legislation, but it is an important mechanism to allow for the transitioning of long-stay visitation to Barbados. So if I can spend my remaining few moments talking about how we are proposing to innovate, Mr. President, I will share the following. Through the Barbados Tourism Marketing, Inc., we currently have a dedicated call center, which is meant to set up a one-stop shop akin to what you may have for investment, and a welcome stamp visitor 24 hours a day can make contact with us through the call center. They can make contact with us online, and there are these robot things that you can talk to online. I may have called it incorrectly, Mr. President, but the more techie among us would know better than I do. But they can interact online with our officials. We will show you, we take you all the way through from interest to booking to arrival and then afterwards, because the afterwards is perhaps the most important part of it. We are Barbadians, and sometimes navigating our way through the system becomes very challenging because we don't quite know where everything is put down. So sometimes, especially for a visitor, it's really important for us to guide them through the processes in Barbados. Where do you rent a car? How do you file for your child to go to school? What are the options that are available for you for schooling, public or private? What about rental options? Where should you live? What are the prices? What should be a lease, a standard lease arrangement, and what are your rights as a tenant? Those are some of the things that we are assisting with. But we're also assisting with challenges when they present themselves. Mr. President, I wouldn't want to mislead this honorable chamber into thinking that everything is always rosy, because it isn't. Nothing is rosy, and in the absence of the leader of government business, it's not a perfect world. I use his language today, it is not a perfect world, and there must never be any notion that perfection exists anywhere. And so there are challenges from time to time, and when those challenges present themselves, we use the words of former Prime Minister, we face it and we fix it. And that is what we do in all instances. And so there have been instances where unfortunate things have happened and we've intervened. As a ministry, as an institution, as a government, and oftentimes me personally. We intervene where we see issues, we face them, and we fix them. Finally, Mr. President, we are seeing competition from those who see the benefits of a program like this and have wanted to introduce those programs. They have come and they've been price competitive. They have looked at how they can innovate and offer longer stays for lower cost, what additional add-ons they can put into the product. They've done all kinds of things, Mr. President, but Barbados will always only be Barbados. But we cannot rest on our laurels and be comfortable that because it is Barbados, people will come here. People have a choice, and people are making choices every day, so it is our responsibility, whether we are advertising, Mr. President, as we are in the major publications globally, including the Financial Times, as we target major businesses whose workforces remain at home, we are out into the markets. Whether we are advertising, Mr. President, in Travel Weekly and all the major travel publications and spending the resources that are scarce but important to ensure high returns on investment, we are out there, Mr. President. Whether we are collaborating with our overseas officers and directors in the UK, in New York, and in Canada, we are out there in the market. We've seen, Mr. President, that one of our airlines in particular has put on a dedicated flight purely business class for the purpose of ensuring that this particular segment, which typically wants to travel at a certain level, is facilitated to come to Barbados. It's not an easy fix, Mr. President, but we are committed to ensuring that this remains a part of the tourism diversification product. We're ensuring that whether you are staying in a hotel, in a villa, in a private home, that you are a part of the accommodation segment of Barbados. We're ensuring, Mr. President, that small and medium-sized enterprises have an opportunity to earn as a result of the presence of this cadre of person, Mr. President, because this is with us to stay. And I'm hopeful, Mr. President, that as we recognize the merits of this program, even in an environment of challenge, that we would see what others have seen in us: resilience, confidence, a place to live and to be despite challenges, and finding challenges where they are, fixing them, but loving Barbados nonetheless enough to want to stay here. And with these few words, Mr. President, I commend this bill to this honorable chamber.
Move the second. Move the second reading.
I beg to move at this time, Mr. President, that this bill now be read a second time.
Thank you. Before we take Senator Franklin, I just want to acknowledge the presence of some young people who visited with us today. They visited the House of Assembly yesterday, and they're with us in the Senate today. Terrell Jokes, Samara Doyle, and Kai Allman. They are UWI students, I understand, and one is also is it Youth Commissioner for St. Thomas? Correct. So, welcome. And I believe that's a perfect segue for Senator Franklin, a gentleman of St. Thomas. Some may say the governor of St. Thomas. But a man from the true heart of Barbados, St. Thomas, to make his contribution. Senator Franklin. But welcome our young people, and I've asked them to join us downstairs for lunch as well, if they are able to do so. I hope you enjoy and find your presence in the Senate useful this morning. Senator Franklin.
Sir, thank you very much. And I'd also like to welcome the students to the Art Chamber. And I'm hopeful that more young people get involved in this process, because I'm not going to be here forever, and I would want to see some youngsters take my place and your place and all of our places as many times come, but we don't seem to be encouraging enough young people into political life. I don't know if they are skeptical about the examples that we set, but I'm hoping that we can get some young, bright people in here. Sometimes I think that bright people are sadly lacking in this place, so I'm hoping that we would, and the other place. So I'm hoping that we will have some young, bright people who pay an interest and do the country service, not self, country service, by coming here and giving of their talents. And I welcome them, sir. Sir, I'm not going to delay the Senate very much in this matter, because I remember when this bill was first debated, I supported the measure. I thought the government was a bit offering it a bit too cheaply, but that was the government's call, and I complimented the government on its initiative back then. And I'm happy that it worked out, because I don't often compliment this government, because I don't find very many things to compliment them about. But this is one initiative that that is worthwhile. So, and I was very upset when I saw a government taking policies that would have scuttled it. I'm not going to rehash the debacle that we had in December, end of December, beginning of January, when we allowed people into Barbados prematurely, and we had a flare, and they were saying, these welcome stamp people will not come, or they will leave, but they stayed, and I'm grateful. I'm grateful to them, and I'm happy for the contribution that they have been making, sir. Because look, We have unemployment over 30% in Barbados. How many people tell you in the newspapers or whatever? It's over 30%. Because when you look at the amount of people who went home from tourism, unless tourism industry is employing 2 or 3% of the workforce in Barbados, that's the only way we can have such low numbers in unemployment. We had a massive layoff in the tourism sector. So our numbers cannot be this low. I don't care anybody tell me. Unless you are saying, well, they were off for too long, so they're not looking for jobs, so we're not counting them. And then we have people in Barbados who are getting 2 days a week. So even if it is not unemployment, it is underemployment. 2 days a week, 3 days a week. They're working for 20 hours, 24 hours in an effort not to pay them servants' pay. Because if you're working for less than half your week's wages, your normal week's wages, you can claim severance and also claim unemployment benefits as well. So the employers have learned that you will give them 21 hours or 22 hours. But for people who are not making it on 40 hours, it's a bit difficult on 21. Some of them would have been better off at unemployment benefits, but then the unemployment benefits stopped at 6 months, and the government did not have the foresight, like the last administration, when there were massive layoffs, to increase the time for drawing unemployment benefits. You had 6 months, 26 weeks. The last administration, under Mr. Stewart, they extended the unemployment benefits for up to 40 weeks. So it gave people a cushion. We have too many people in Barbados suffering. So if we didn't have this welcome stamp, we would have a lot more, because I know of people who have gotten jobs working in those homes. I don't know a lot of them, but I know about 3. And that is 3 that have been on the breadline. So I'm happy that it worked out. I remember a Canadian MP coming to Barbados, and he came to vacation in Barbados, and he got caught. And he had to face some sort of protest in Canada. But his reasoning was that Barbados was the safest place on earth because we didn't have any high COVID rates. And government then made sure we did. And I said I'm grateful that the people stayed. They stayed the course. Like that, they stayed the course, and they have now become part of the Barbadian family. Some of them have actually, with all the restrictions in place, they still find time to see some of Barbados and integrate into Barbados. So I'm happy that it worked out, and I cannot say enough that the government has done a good thing. You know, I know you will say, well, Caswell complimented us on it, and he doesn't usually do that. But I say, when the government does something good, I say so. And I wish that you would I wish I could say so more often. Sir? So as I said, sir, I could not allow this opportunity to pass without saying to the people who've come to help this country economy to rebound. Well, it is not bounding fast, it's come back. To help this country, that the government is grateful, the opposition is grateful, the people of Barbados generally are grateful for their presence and happy for them. But, sir, I must sound a warning. You know me, I have to always sound a warning. Visitors can be very fickle, especially when it comes to crime. Government, police, whoever is responsible needs to do something about the crime situation in Barbados. Every day I hear reports and getting WhatsApp messages that turn in my stomach with people being brutally assaulted, murdered. Just a couple of days ago, I am at home. I heard a little ping on my phone. I looked down. Somebody sending me gruesome pictures. I wish they wouldn't send them. my stomach is not that strong. But, sir, that can have an effect on our tourism. It can have an effect on this welcome stamp. And government must put more resources behind the police so that the police can be proactive and be out there in their numbers to insist that people behave, and they said protect, serve, and reassure. Then we need some reassurance, not only for the tourists but for us as well, for us too. But it is not going to happen with just pure talk and by naming 2 deputy commissioners and that kind of stuff. You need more. You need boots on the ground. I had planned to come here and talk about that in the Defense Force bill, but that will come in next time. Because we need to have more police officers, and we need to pay them better. Right now, the problem with the police force is that they don't have the numbers. There are the vacancies, but they don't have the numbers. And they can't get the numbers because the quality of people that the police are looking for, the police are setting standards a bit high, too high, in my estimation. And as a result, too many people cannot get into the force. You see what's happening here? Policemen are not recruited from Mars. They are recruited from among the people in Barbados that we grew up with and we find. So if you have difficulties with them, we have problems with our brand for our people, our young people. So we got to look at that and to give people second chances. The police go into districts and ask people if a fellow is bad behaved. And if that answer is yes, they're not necessarily criminal. It might just be youthful exuberance, but somebody don't like it, and he don't make it in the police force. And the police force might have lost a good person, because I went to school with some fellows who I always thought would have gone to jail, hanged or something. I know these fellows, one's a priest. I couldn't believe it when they saw him. So people change.
Not that school.
So we need to give people, especially young people, who are willing to get in the police force. And then also the qualification requirements for the police force a bit more stringent. And people might say, look, the police force is paramilitary. I was military, and I understand how military works. And when you're recruiting people for the military, all you want to make sure the fellow is literate, good character, and then you will teach him everything that he needs to know. Slate blank, you can put what you need on that slate. But you don't need him with 10 O levels and 6 CXC or whatever you have these days. You need have a fellow that you can train. So I think the police need to review the qualification requirements to allow other people to come in, because you can be a special constable without all that qualification, and then eventually go into the police force. Right? Why not let fellas get into the police force with the same qualification that you have as a special constable? Give him the training. We had policemen who were excellent officers who never set foot in secondary school. But they did the police subjects that they were taught, and they went through and trained, and they became very good policemen. Then some of them turned around and went to, became lawyers. You shouldn't cut off people at that young age. You need to give people more opportunities to develop. I know I strayed a bit from the welcome stamp thing, but I wanted to say that too, because it is critical that if we are going to maintain a good tourism product, we have to have safety in this country. Yeah, you will have the odd fellow here doing things, that is expected. But we are not having odd now. It is odd when we don't have crime, when we don't have serious crime. And that is the problem we're having. Yeah? People are bold. No one time when you see the police used to run. Want to run police now? Because he can't beg any police run. So we are putting, and I talk about the police, we are putting police out there at risk of their lives with these people. You got to clamp down. I remember seeing and hear some time ago that the guns were coming in and they were coming in on fishing boats and they got some lashes for it. But, I got some support outside of here because we have scanners in the port. It's not easy to get things through the port now, but they're getting in here. These guns are getting in. Right? It is easy. And my officers and customs are doing a remarkable job keeping them out. But they're getting through. So they're not getting through the port. They're not getting through the airport. They have to get in somewhere because we don't make guns in Barbados. And all of those things will have effect on the tourism product, on the welcome stamp, on any other product that we have. We need to wrestle this thing to the ground. And we need also, we have a lot of judges now, deal with them swiftly. I see we had some nonsense in with one of the unions here the other day and filed a case one day, heard the next, and give a decision tonight. We want justice like this, swift justice too. We want swift justice. We want these people off the street. We don't want them being put on bail because they were in jail too long, and the judge is saying, man, they're fair to keep in jail too long. After all, the man is innocent until proven guilty. We need to get the system going where the crime and punishment are close together. Not 3-4 years down the road, because it loses that deterrent effect. When you punish a fellow 5 years, 6 years down the road for something he did when he was a little foolish boy, he ain't going to forget about it because he knew he did it and he's still facing the court. But it's not going to have that same effect on him or other people around him if we don't do it. So we have several things. We need to put more police boots on the ground. And I'm not talking about in the offices sitting down and answering the phone and that kind of stuff. Leave that for the clerical officers and stuff. We need policemen on the street. We don't have enough, and we need to put them on the street. There is no way, unless you're going to do like in Ireland. I went to Ireland a few years ago, and every time I turn a corner, I look around, I can see cameras. And one guy remarked to me, he said, Casper, why this remarkable? I've not seen any police around the place, I said, look, that's because, look there, the police are watching you. We need that too. We need that too. You don't have the police, you don't have the cameras. So, Mr. President, I don't know if I'm venting a lot because you people don't allow me to speak too often because you don't hold the Senate regular, so I just got a chance to talk about everything. So that's probably why I am going so wide and varied about a lot of these things, but I'm going to come home.
Please do, Senator Franklin.
I'm going to come home.
I've given you lots of runway.
I'm going to come home, sir, and I'm going to repeat what I said in the beginning, that I compliment the government on this welcome stamp program. It isn't often that I can compliment them, but when I can, I will. It is, and it has worked out, and I'm very happy, and I wish that the government has my support in this regard. I'm much obliged to you, sir.
Thank you, Senator Franklin. Senator Grant.
Thank you, Mr. President. I don't intend to be very long in my submission, but to give my full support to this bill, which is before this honorable chamber. There can be no doubt of the significant challenges we have had as a country specifically as it relates to tourism. I don't have to go over, Mr. President, the fact of what the implications of COVID-19, what that has meant. I don't have to speak to the different lockdowns that we had and the curfews and the impact that that would have had on revenues. I would have spoken to those issues before in this honorable chamber. And I believe, Mr. President, that coming up with a program such as the Welcome Stamp is one that is very positive, very welcomed certainly by the Barbados Hotel and Tourism Association, and I believe supported by many other organizations and individuals as well. The impact on our economy due to COVID-19 and due to the fallout from tourism has been severe. I've spoken to this before. We are seeing some signs of recovery. In 2020, we would have had occupancy going as low, I believe, as 4.7%. For the months of February to June, occupancy in hotels has been between 15 to 20%. And we have seen some improvement in revenues as well. But sir, with respect to the revenues, you're looking at between maybe 10 to 15% of what it would have been in 2019. So there's still a long way that we have to go. But this kind of program is able to demonstrate the confidence that persons have in us as a country. And I want to say, sir, that we need as Barbadians as well to have that confidence in ourselves. Because this is a time when COVID-19 is impacting on all countries around the world. And yet, persons are willing to leave their country and to come to Barbados and to work. And that says something about what we have. That says something about the manner in which we have managed this COVID-19 pandemic, and it says something about us as a people. I heard the Minister of Tourism make reference to the fact that the welcome stampers, as we refer to them now, that they're able to traverse Barbados and go to many different places that some of us as Barbadians don't even know about. And that brings us to the realization that we do have a product diversity and a product offering that we do have to probably look at to better package for the visitors when they come. But there's no doubt that we have a diversity in product offering here, and that persons want to come and enjoy the genuine, authentic offerings that Barbados has. And of course, our people are known to be very warm and friendly. We have a high repeat factor. I believe it's the highest in the Caribbean, a repeat factor of around 40%. And that, to a large measure, is due to the fact that Barbadians are known as very warm and friendly people. So I support this piece of legislation. It has certainly been positive for many of our members, BHTA members, the hotels, villas in particular, guest houses and apartments. And the reality is, without this program, some of that business just would not have been there. But there's another component as well, and Minister Cummings did indicate that these persons are here for a long period. And what we have also observed is that some of them are investing in Barbados. Some of them are purchasing and looking to purchase property here. And you know, there are many people who come to Barbados and fall in love with our country. And I believe if you went online to look at what is being said about the welcome stamp, one of the first things you will see is that persons are encouraged to come and work from paradise. And we have a lot to be proud of as Barbadians. And as I say that, sir, I remember the Calypso by Ronnie D. It's a paradise, this country that we live in. The president would not allow me to sing in the Senate chamber. But the point that was being made in that song is that we have a lot to be thankful for. And I heard, sir, Ronnie D speaking to that as he spoke about that Sunday program that we have, My Community, and how he came about in developing that song while he was traveling overseas and recognizing all of the good and positive things that we have. So sometimes, yes, we are a little hard on ourselves, but I'm encouraging us to recognize how very thankful we can be for what we have and to be confident in ourselves. Mr. President, I heard some remarks made in relation to the number of persons employed in the industry. I want to remind Senator Franklin that of course he always listens. He leaves the chamber. That's one of the funny things that I always observe, sir. That he leaves the chamber, but if you ask him what I say, he can tell you every word verbatim because he does listen. So wherever he may be, I want to say that there's a program known as the BEST program, the Barbados Employment and Sustainable Transformation Program. And the focus of that program, sir, has been to ensure that persons are continued to be employed in the industry and to ensure that there's a transformational element as well. And the number of companies participating in the program, that number has been increasing. There have been recently some adjustments to the program, and I leave that to the Minister of Tourism to speak to specifically, but there have been some adjustments. And the reality is this, that as Minister Cummins quite rightly indicated, nothing is perfect. And there will be times when you will need to make adjustments, but the objective of that program is very important. I'm also able, sir, to report that many of the hotels not participating in the program have, however, found the mechanism to re-engage their workers because there is the recognition that this pandemic has been impacting severely on the workers, and many of our members are very concerned as to what is happening not only with the workers but with their families as well. So there's a commitment coming from the Barbados Hotel and Tourism Association to continue to work with government to ensure that we are able to continue to keep persons employed. I want to say as well, sir, that there is an element relating to the seasonal worker, because the truth is that the way the industry functions is that during the winter period, you generally find that you need to have a lot more workers, and in the hotels, for example, you will find that there are a lot of seasonal workers that are brought in during the winter period. Of course, when you have occupancy that is 15 and 20%, although the occupancy, as I said, is projected to be better for the months of July, August, and September, the projection is 32% for October. It is 40% for November, 54%, and December, 55%. Those are the projections, but we are expecting that as long as things continue as they are, because the point has to be reinforced as well that we are very much as a tourism country. We are impacted by what is happening in our source markets, and we continue to observe what is happening taking note, because if there's any further lockdown or any further measures taken to restrict travel in the source markets, that will have a significant impact on us. But we are seeing some measure of recovery. We are expecting that by the winter, we will see occupancy in excess of 50%. When Barbados was put on the green list, instantaneously, Mr. President, bookings increase. My members were informing me that literally as it was announced, they were seeing increase in bookings. And that is very positive for us. What it demonstrates is what our partners have been telling us, that Barbados is still the #1 selling destination in the Caribbean. And again, it says something about us. Mr. President, I want to speak very briefly to the issue raised of crime. And I want to go a step further than Senator Franklin. And while no one can deny the need for government to provide the resources to the Royal Barbados Police Force, I also think that it is important for Barbadian businesses to give their support in a very tangible and real way to the Royal Barbados Police Force as well. Recently, there was a leadership training program that took place at the Hilton Hotel. It involved 2 senior police officers from the Durham Constabulary in the UK. And they were selected, sir, because the size of the area that they are responsible for, I think they communicated that is for about 700,000 persons, all right? But the size of their force is less than that of what we have in Barbados. And the objective was to ensure that you are able to utilize the best practices. They use a lot of technology, and they were able to strategize. And therefore, what happened was that a number of officers from the Royal Barbados Police Force received training at the Hilton Hotel, and then you're going to have some officers actually leave Barbados and go to Durham to actually function and to participate there. And I mentioned that, sir, because that was supported by the Barbados Hotel and Tourism Association and also by the Tourism Development Corporation. And I want to encourage businesses in Barbados to give their support. Of course, sir, the BHTA and the TDC would have supported facilitating for the Royal Barbados Police Force CCTV cameras. Hundreds of thousands of dollars in support of CCTV cameras, of segways, of providing beach uniforms. And we're in the process now, sir, of speaking with the leadership of the Royal Barbados Police Force about giving more support. But I want to use this opportunity to encourage other businesses as well to come on board and support the Royal Barbados Police Force. I believe that that is very important. Yes, we still have a tourism liaison officer, and there is a very good relationship between that officer and the tourism industry, and there's good assistance provided there, and also through the Barbados Tourism Marketing Inc. as well. So, Mr. President, I just wanted to lend my voice in support of this piece of legislation. I believe that it is very important that we support this and that the welcome stamp continues, and that we continue to focus and pay attention so that we are able to expand the number of persons who come and participate in this welcome stamp. And sir, with those few words, I am obliged to you.
Thank you, Senator Grant. Senator Dr. Rogers.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Good morning, colleagues. Afternoon. I rise briefly just to lend my support to this piece of legislation. As we all know, the country has been going through a very difficult time for the last year and a half, and it is always easy to point out what is going wrong when the chips are down. But I think it is incumbent upon us as well to commend that which is going well. And the mere objects and reasons of this bill says it all. The bill would amend the Remote Employment Act 2020 to 2023 to provide for Barbados Welcome Stamp to be renewed. And that says it all. It means that not only has the project been successful, but we have managed to create an environment in which people feel comfortable enough to stay longer. And the government should be commended for the work they've done, the guidance they've offered, the innovation that they've had in bringing this to fruition. But I also wish to commend the people of Barbados, because each person has had to work to provide the type of environment that people will feel comfortable in. I've said it before that we have been very responsive to the calls from our health authorities, and I encourage all Barbadians to continue to do so. We're not out of the woods. The pandemic is still raging in our world, and we have to keep our guards up. But in doing so, we provide the type of environment that people will feel comfortable being in once we continue to follow the protocols. I wish to thank Senator Grant for the statistics that he would have offered in his speech not long ago. And it says that we continue to thrive and continue to do the best we can in this environment to make Barbados the best it can possibly be. But I also wish to pick up on the area that Senator Franklin would have mentioned, the challenge of crime, to impress upon especially the younger people in Barbados that in order for us to continue to be successful, each one of us has to play our part. And during the time we were last here, in the interim, we had the emergence of what became sensational, the Trojan rhythm, coming up in our community. And one may recall that the last time I spoke here on the liquor license bill, I cautioned our entertainers that remember your role models in our society. And people listen to you. That's why I quote a lot of Calypso in here. It's not just because I like Calypso, but because I believe that our entertainers and our poets and so on speak to us as well. And I wish for them to recognize that once you have set yourself up to engage in something for public consumption, everything you say can have a positive or negative reaction. What bothered me about the Trojan rhythm, sir, was not so much what the lyrics that were said. That's normal for dance hall. But what bothered me more were the excuses that were offered. And I want our entertainers to understand that those excuses are not acceptable. Do not come and tell me you're sorry for something you did a year and a half ago, and I would have rather you done it now. If you did it a year and a half ago, that was before we went into lockdown and we were having serious crime in this country. We had just come off a year where we had a record number of murders in Barbados. And as I spoke in I think it was February of 2020, the number of murders we had at the time was trending to where we were in 2019. So don't tell me you did it a year and a half ago. Accept that it was wrong. It was not the best thing to have done at the point in time where our country was at, and let us move on. We love you. We love your music. We support you. But also recognize that you are part of a broader society, and everything you do can have a reaction. You may not do the things that you sing about in the songs because that's not your nature, but there are people out there who listen to you and feed on every word that you present. And they may be led to do exactly what you're saying in the songs. So I just thought I'd put that on record here as we're discussing this bill, because this is a positive thing that has come out of COVID for us. We have managed to create the type of environment to encourage people to stay here and even invest here, as we've heard, that this is a place that I would want to be. It means that each one of us now has to play our part, and that involves the entertainers as well. As I said, I love my crop over. I love calypso. I love a little bit of dance hall when I can understand the lyrics. Not as much as Senator Cummings, but because I love my culture. But I also expect us to be responsible, as I'm sure they would expect me to be responsible in whatever position I have in the society. Let us work together and play our roles to make this society the best it can possibly be. So once again, I wish to congratulate the government on this innovative piece of legislation in terms of first bringing the remote employment bill, and now we've gotten to this point where we're amending it for renewal, and that means that something positive is happening in the country. I also want to commend Barbadians in general for creating the type of environment that will encourage people to stay here and invest here. With those few words, I thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, Senator Dr. Rogers. Your speakers, Senator Cummings.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I wish to express my appreciation to the colleagues who have spoken in support of the bill. I wish to perhaps take a moment to respond to some of the points that were raised by my colleagues. And perhaps a good place to start is with my friend, Senator Franklin, who I'm hoping he's hearing me wherever he is in the Honorable Chamber. But I expect to see him walking back through the door momentarily or very soon. But that notwithstanding, Mr. President, I think my memory may be failing me, but I don't remember on that occasion my colleague supporting the bill. If memory serves me well, I recall that he spent the entire time speaking on the legislation and whether or not it was a backdoor attempt to introduce other elements into the debate. But I don't recall that he actually found the time to support the bill. He's a lot more comfortable critiquing these matters. I also want to join him, however, on one of those rare occasions where I agreed with him on the importance of bringing young people and bright young people, like our guests who are with us today. And I, in particular, am not going to miss the opportunity of being on the floor and having control of the microphone to welcome my young cousin, Kai Ullman, who is among those behind us, who I remember taking as a then almost 18-year-old to the Barbados Labour Party's Tweedside Road Youth Rally, and he was not yet able to vote at the time, but he was so actively interested in politics and in engagement that he was with us nonetheless. And on that night, I remember introducing him to the then president of the Barbados Labour Party League of Young Socialists, who brought him in and has never let him go since then, as the very definition of bright young people who are being brought into leadership. And I think that's the benefit of being part of a mass-based political party. And I understand why Senator Franklin may have that difficulty with understanding where the number of persons coming into politics may be coming from. But I'm told by my colleagues that the League of Young Socialists has a registered count of over 2,500 young people. They have just recently started a UWI chapter of the League of Young Socialists, and they're just under 50 bright young people who have already signed up for that. And I wish to give the assurance that certainly as a political party and as a political movement, the League of Young Socialists is ensuring that the future of Barbados under this Barbados Labour Party and future Barbados Labour Party administrations is in solid hands. Now, Mr. President, I want to just raise two further issues that were raised by the colleagues. I wish to endorse the comments made by Senator Rogers, specifically on crime. And I would perhaps go a little further, and I know that my comments may not always be agreed on by everyone, but I think Senator Rogers raises this point. There is a role to be played by government, Mr. President. There is a responsibility that we all have to keep people safe, whether it is for the purpose of quarantine, for the purpose of border entry requirements, or it is on the issue of crime. But there is an individual responsibility, Mr. President, that I want to introduce into this conversation that we have been having as a nation. It is not the government who raises our children in our homes. It is not the government who is there in our communities guiding the compass of what is right versus wrong. We as parents, I am the mother of a 21, almost 22-year-old. It is not the state's responsibility to raise my daughter. It is mine, Mr. President. And whether she is a gift or a menace to society, that is my individual responsibility, Mr. President. And I want us to start to take some responsibility for our role in ensuring that crime at the end of what comes out of our homes is diminished, Mr. President. We have a responsibility for that. Mr. President, the government did not bring COVID across the borders. The government has had the most restricted COVID border protocols in the region. Ask me how I know, Mr. President. I know this because it is my job to know. I know this, Mr. President, because I've taken the time with my team to preview every single entry protocol across this region from the time we started until now. I can tell you what every single country's entry protocol in this region is, Mr. President. There is no other country in the region, Mr. President, that has a minimum of 3 days prior to arrival and testing with a negative test. All other countries in the region average between 5 to 7 days prior to arrival. Barbados has the shortest time prior to arrival. There is no other country in the region, Mr. President, even in an era of vaccinations, that has a post-arrival test, Mr. President. Barbados is the only country with a post-arrival test. And you know what else, Mr. President? And I said it yesterday in my State of the Industry address to the media. It has cost us visitors. There are travelers who want to be able to move around the world, who are dealing with pent-up demand. They're choosing to go elsewhere in the region, Mr. President. Do you know why? Because Barbados is being seen as too restrictive. So at the government level, we have done our jobs of ensuring that our protocols are in place to keep people safe. But here again comes that individual responsibility. If I am a Barbadian, and my relative is coming home, do not go to the airport to collect that bag or that package from the person before they get into the bus to go to their quarantine hotel. That is taking personal responsibility. Mr. President, if I am a Barbadian, it is not for me to go to the hotel. By definition, you're in quarantine. What are you doing at the people's hotels? Harassing the security to go and take food of your preference for your relatives. We have to take some responsibility too, Mr. President. We have to start wearing our masks. We have to be sanitizing and cleansing our hands. And we have to start listening to the authorities who actually studied this, who are researching this, and who have made decisions on the basis of empirical analysis, who tell us that the vaccines are safe, and to stop listening to the second pandemic that is the Facebook and social media pandemic of misinformation. We have to take some personal responsibility, Mr. President. So it is not the government this or the government that to do everything for us. We have to do some things to protect ourselves. There is no government in my space right now telling me, Lisa, go wash your hands. There's nobody in my car when I am traveling with somebody else who tells me, Lisa, don't put on your mask, is all right. And then a couple days later, we have a problem. Mr. President, I say in my capacity as Minister of Tourism as well, and I've said it before and I say it again, without hesitation. If we are asking visitors, actually let me go back for a moment. In December, January, as raised by Senator Franklin, the Ministry of Health declared that we had community spread. I am not aware that despite the reduction in numbers that they have said, we no longer have community spread. Once it's declared, it's declared. That was December, January, Mr. President. Did that stop us from walking around with our masks underneath our chins? Did that stop us from seeing the COVID parties, the ash parties, the hurricane parties, all without masks? It didn't stop us from seeing any of that, Mr. President, from December until now. And so I raised the point, and I'm urging, begging, pleading with us to take some personal responsibility and stop shifting responsibility for our own well-being onto everyone else. We have to do it, Mr. President. It is absolutely critical. It is actually a life and death issue at this point. And my final issue on this is the question of vaccinations. Now, it's an amazing thing that I was subjected to the public ridicule after a negative COVID test and clearance from a chief medical officer, and now I'm vaccinated, but one of the chief architects of that public ridicule has issues with vaccines, that which keeps us safe. How are we here, Mr. President? We have to treat to the question of being vaccinated. We have to treat to the question of being vaccinated based on empirical evidence. We have to allow our decisions, our actions, and how we treat others and subject others to treatment to be guided by empirical analysis and by medical and scientific knowledge. The same applies to crime, Mr. President. I don't know, Senator Grant spoke in his great presentation on the support being provided by the BHTA and the Tourism Development, the team led currently presently by former Mayor Martin Ince and Mark Thompson and the colleagues there in the TDA. Mr. President, I have had the privilege and the strain of being among those who would at times visit with visitors who have been victims of crime. And I want to share a story in response to that, Mr. President. I agree with all that has been said about bringing crime under control for Barbados, not specifically for visitors, but for Barbados, because we all must feel safe. I raised the point, I agree also with the points being raised by Senator Rogers. But I had the privilege, if you want to call it that, of visiting with a visitor who had been a victim of crime. Many of them, when it happens. They're not a lot, but when it happens, I tend to do it myself. And I remember this one gentleman saying to me, he was affected by the incident that took place in St. Lawrence Gap several months ago. And I said to him, Mr. President, what can we do to help you? What do you need? His answer to me was the following: renew my welcome stamp. That's all I want from Barbados. That, Mr. President, was what he told me. Because despite being a victim of crime, his response to me was, I come from a much larger country than Barbados, and what happened to me could have happened to me at home or anywhere else in the world. He said, but what has distinguished Barbados is the level of humanity that I have seen from our people, the way in which everybody has rallied, the way in which random people come up to me to say, we're so sorry this happened to you. This is not normal for Barbados. And he said to me, I just want y'all to renew my welcome stamp. Richard, I hope you're hearing this today. The welcome stamp is being renewed. We have the support of our colleagues, and I want to encourage all of us to continue to take collective and personal responsibility for our well-being, for our nations, for our community, and for our tourism sector, Mr. President, because all of them must go together. And with those few words, I'm obliged and I wish to beg that this bill be read a third time.
Second.
A second time.
Thank you, Senator Cummins. The question is that this bill be read a second time. Those honourable senators in favour, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Mr. President, I beg to move that the Senate now be dissolved into committee, and Your Honour do now leave the chair.
The question is that I do now leave the chair, and the Honourable Senate resolve itself into committee for further consideration of this bill. Those honourable senators in favour, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it. Senate is now in committee.
The Senate is now in committee.
Clause 1.
Mr. Chairman, I beg to move that Clause 1 do now stand part.
The question is that Clause 1 stand part. Honourable senators in favour, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Clause 2.
Mr. President, I beg to move that Clause 2 stand part.
The question is that Clause 2 stand part. Honourable senators in favour, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Clause 3.
Mr. Chair, I beg to move that Clause 3 do stand part.
The question is that Clause 3 stand part. Honorable senators in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Clause 4.
Mr. Chair, I beg to move that Clause 4 stand part.
The question is that Clause 4 stand part. Honorable senators in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Clause 5.
I beg to move, Mr. Chair, that Clause 5 stand part.
The question is that Clause 5 stand part. Honorable senators in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Clause 6.
Mr. Chair, I beg to move that Clause 6 stand part.
The question is that Clause 6 stand part. Honorable senators in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Schedule.
Mr. Chair, I beg to move that the schedule be the schedule to the bill.
The question is that the schedule be the schedule to the bill. Honorable senators in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Mr. Chairman, I beg to move that Your Honor do no report to His Honor the Chair that the passing of one bill in committee.
The question is that I do not report to His Honor the President the passing of one bill in committee. Honorable senators in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
The chairman has reported to me the passing of one bill in committee. Third time. Senator Cummins.
Mr. President, I beg to move that this bill do not pass and
Third
be
time.
a third time, I'm sorry.
The question is that this bill be now read a third time. Those honorable senators in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Mr. President, I beg to move that this bill, the Remote Employment Act 2020-23, do now pass and be cited as the Remote Employment Act 2020-2023.
The question is that this bill be now pass and be so cited. Those honorable senators in favor, please say. Sorry, just a second, Mr. Clerk.
The bill is new.
Yeah, okay. Don't be an amendment bill.
The bill. So amended. Okay. What? Mr. President, my apologies that this act now be cited as the Remote Employment Amendment Act 2021, further to the original act of 2020 to 2023.
Thanks, Senator Cummins. The question is that this bill do not pass and be cited as the Remote Employment Amendment Act 2021. Those honorable senators in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it. The bill is now passed and so cited. Number one.
Order number 1, sir.
Order number 1.
In the name of the Honorable Minister of Tourism and International Transport, to move the second reading of the Grantley Adams International Airport Transfer of Management and Vesting of Assets Amendment Bill 2021.
Senator Cummins.
Mr. President, I I rise on this occasion to speak on the legislation is here called Grantley Adams International Airport Transfer of Management and Vesting of Assets Act. Mr. President, as you know and everyone is aware, in 2019, the government of Barbados entered into an agreement with the International Financial Corporation, which is the private sector arm of the World Bank, to undertake the process of transitioning the Grantley Adams International Airport into a public-private sector partnership. I believe that on more than one occasion we have indicated that this is a beneficial relationship for Barbados, as the purpose of the concession will allow us to achieve a number of objectives, including the improvement and expansion of Gaia Inc.'s infrastructure to meet current and future demand, to provide private sector management to address and reform the operational efficiencies and inefficiencies, to improve service quality standards in line with international best practices, to enhance the passenger experience, and ultimately, Mr. President, to position Gaia Inc. as a regional, in particular, a southern regional logistics hub for the Caribbean. In addition, Mr. President, this will allow for the mobilization of private sector investment in the Grantley Adams International Airport. And I'm going to spend just a few moments speaking about the PPP, because I know it is a continued topic of discussion on which people have some interest, and I would want to take a moment to give people somewhat of an update on the status of the transaction. Mr. President, when I speak about those 6 objectives that are set out for the Grantley Adams International Airport, these things are all contained in an extensively developed transaction structure report. What are the service quality standards, Mr. President? They're not subjective, they're not driven by Barbados, but they are international. And what we've sought to do is to use a combination of the International Civil Aviation Organization, IATA, who represents the travel industry in particular, and there are annual service standards that are developed most times that will be the basis on which service standards are developed. In terms of operating efficiencies, the Grantley Adams International Airport has been a commercial state-owned enterprise, so defined under the Public Financial Management Act of Barbados, passed in 2019, and we are used to having the Grantley Adams International Airport being entirely self-funded. There has been no agency, no private sector company, perhaps except those in medical services, that have escaped the ravages of the tourism collapse as a result of COVID-19. The Grantley Adams International Airport, like most other airports in its position, has therefore not been unaffected. It means, therefore, Mr. President, that there are a number of operational issues that will therefore need to be addressed as we go into a PPP. In terms of infrastructure, Mr. President, and the mobilization of private investment, again, the Grantley Adams International Airport is a dated facility. It is not a facility that was built 2 years ago. It's been built for quite some time. Since the Grantley Adams International Airport was built, Mr. President, we have seen at least 2 new international airports built and brought into service here in the region. What is the future of the Grantley Adams International Airport? How do we mobilize private investment to invest in that future? And what does a Grantley Adams International Airport look like in the next 5 years, in the next 10 years, in the next 30 years, to position Barbados to meet the ambition that we have set for being a logistics hub? That is the basis on which the PPP is being developed, Mr. President, and it is on that basis, Mr. President, that we have a requirement in the documentation for a couple of documents. One, a master plan. The master plan will contain what we describe as compulsory or mandatory investment, and that is meant to be annualized over the first 5 years of the contract. Then it's meant to be spread out over the remaining lifespan of the contract, and then there are specific performance requirements for the return of the asset to the government of Barbados and the Crown. There are also performance standards that have to be developed and managed. And then thirdly, Mr. President, in terms of investment attraction, there are what we would call demand-driven investments. And those demand-driven investments, Mr. President, will be based on what the industry or what the sectors are calling for at a given time and where there would be a return on investment for that capitalization. Those things are meant to be annualized, Mr. President, over the course of the life cycle of the concession agreement, which is for a period of potentially 30 years. Mr. President, we are giving a couple of commitments that I want to raise here today, just to be clear and to preempt some of the kinds of conversations that could evolve. The government of Barbados is committed to ensuring the protection of labor at the Grantley Adams International Airport. And despite a significant reduction, and I don't want to call it an insignificant reduction, because I don't think that certainly those of us who are numerically inclined would think that 95% of revenue year to date would be an insignificant number. What the Grantley Adams International Airport has been able to do, Mr. President, in the last year has been nothing short of commendable. With 95% of its revenue year to date gone, the Grantley Adams International Airport has still retained its labor force, as is the standard across the public sector. And it is on that basis that the government of Barbados has had from central government to transfer funds to support the Grantley Adams International Airport and to ensure that they can meet their operating costs. This is a commitment of the government of Barbados, and it will continue to be a commitment of the government of Barbados. In addition, Mr. President, we will be looking at regulatory investments, and regulatory investments including security investments. I want to spend a moment speaking about those, Mr. President, simply because they are really so critical. The regulatory investments include things like our environmental provisions. What are we going to do with incineration capacity, waste disposal, water treatment, sewage? Those are all incorporated, Mr. President, under the prioritized, what we call capital expenditure in the actual project. So within the first 5 years, Mr. President, that will be the CapEx that will be prioritized, as well as the master plan mandatory CapEx. Those will be prioritized in the first 5 years of the concession. After that, Mr. President, then we start to deal with demand-driven CapEx and then optional CapEx over time. So we've structured it in a way, Mr. President, that would allow for us to be able to meet all of our international obligations, all of our performance standards, while at the same time improving operating efficiencies. Now, the purpose at this time, Mr. President, of the legislative amendment is to allow for the Gaia Inc. to take the necessary steps to enter into this concession agreement and to rationalize how contracts are transferred to the operator. I wish to make the following point clear. Full regulatory management for our airspace and our administration of our aviation sector will remain with the government of Barbados. Those services have not been transferred to a concessionaire. So Air Transport Licensing Authority remains an entity that takes responsibility for providing licenses. The Barbados Civil Aviation Department remains the entity that is responsible for issuing pilot licenses and allowing for traffic to take place in our airspace. And I will come to them in a few moments. So coming out of the legal review process, it was found that this amendment was necessary to allow for the transfer of operations to go to the concessionaire and to have them be in a position to retain at the Grantley Adams International Airport the licensing in respect of arrangements concluded by IATA and other pre-existing contractual arrangements relating to the collection of revenues and other types of services. Mr. President, I want to spend a moment, however, just sharing with you what this legislation will do, even as it transfers the ability of the Grantley Adams International Airport to grant a concession to the entity. Mr. President, the Grantley Adams International Airport is what we are now calling the anchor of a new aviation strategy for Barbados. The anchor of a much expanded growth trajectory for Barbados. And what do I mean by that, Mr. President? Beyond the PPP, it is the government's intention to situate the Grantley Adams International Airport as the base around which circular economic activity can now be positioned in the sector. Now, what do I mean? It means that we're using the areas where Barbados has existing capacity to develop new growth industries in areas like maintenance, repair, and operations, cargo expansion. Would you be surprised to know, Mr. President, that even though we had significant revenue loss, 95% year to date at the Grand Adams International Airport, that passenger traffic would have tanked 89.6% for the corresponding period, that cargo traffic was unaffected. Cargo traffic was unaffected. What that tells us, Mr. President, is that there is a latent opportunity because there must be an investment in the transit of goods through Barbados from air and through sea. Cargo is another growth area for Barbados. In addition to that, private aviation. This morning I had a meeting where we were talking specifically about further segmentation within the accommodation sector. And we were looking specifically at the higher end of the market and villas. And the discussion there centered, Mr. President, around how do people who are coming at the highest end of the market travel? They travel, not like me and you, Mr. President, they travel at the front of the bus. They travel in first class and upper class. And they have all the luxury. They have the beauty of private jets and all the facilitation. That is a huge market that Barbados has the opportunity to compete in, and we're going after that business, Mr. President. With fewer passengers coming potentially as a result of COVID, the issue here has to not be bringing high volumes, it has to be how do we do more with potentially less. And so that is a high value segment that we are committed to going after. There's also after manufacturing care. When a plane has come to Barbados, what are the manufacturing services that are available? There are skills and teacher and training that are available. We used to have, we still do have, and we recall that during Hurricane Elsa, the Civil Aviation Training Center was badly damaged by the hurricane. The roof came off. I'm happy to announce that the students were accommodated. I visited on a Sunday to ensure that we were ready by the Monday, and on the Monday, by the time I visited on the Sunday, they had set up the entirely new facility in the headquarters of the Barbados Civil Aviation Department at Charnox in Christchurch, and they had moved their staff over to a new location away from that which had been affected. So, Mr. President, where do people go presently when they want to be trained? We have some capacity here, but is it enough? Our answer to that, Mr. President, it is not enough. And so we are presently committed to working with ICAO to develop that training capacity for Barbados so that people far and wide can come here in the same way that they come here for different types of training. How do we distinguish Barbados as the best in class for training as part of our new aviation sector? Then there are financial services, Mr. President. Those are all among the key elements that we are going to be going after in this new sector. GAIA is just an anchor. GAIA is the basis on which the expansion and the growth trajectory will now be based. I wish to also take the opportunity to advise that in the context of this anchor, the Civil Aviation Authority is meant to be created. The bill has been approved by the Civil Aviation Department in principle. It is presently with the Chief Parliamentary Council, and we're expecting that once that has been completed, it will come to Cabinet for approval, and thereafter it will come to Parliament for debate. But it is the ambition and the work ongoing in the Ministry of Tourism to have a new civil aviation authority for Barbados. And with that, it means that we go after Category 1 ranking for our international airport as well. And we have the ability to have full regulatory control of our upper and our lower airspace. We are in the full flow of preparations for the ICAO audit in 2022, and we're preparing, Mr. President, momentarily to sign a memorandum of understanding with ICAO to facilitate the provision of technical assistance. And then finally, Mr. President, the Cabinet has already approved, in addition to the legislation that I just spoke with you that is coming, we have already approved the legislation which is currently at CPC, and it is the commercial use of unmanned aerial vehicles. We have put Barbados in the position where we are competing in a singularly massive growth industry that we have not yet been functioning in. I'm sorry, not the commercial use of, it is the recreational use of unmanned aerial vehicles. The next item of legislation that we're drafting currently in collaboration with ICAO is on the commercial use of unmanned aerial vehicles. We call them drones. So, Mr. President, while we talk about Grantley Adams International Airport, Grantley Adams International Airport is simply the central plank on which all that I am describing and all that I have not yet had an opportunity to talk about will be based as part of a new growth trajectory. Barbados must come to a place where persons who hold the office, which I do, are not simply referred to as the Minister of Tourism, but they're always to be referred to, Mr. President, as the Minister of Tourism and International Transport, because international transport on its own is a huge growth trajectory that Barbados is committed at this point under our leadership and under my guidance to diversifying our country into and taking advantage of a huge market. Finally, Mr. President, I want to speak for a moment about our forecast. Because we're talking about the airport's recovery is driven by forecasts. It's not driven by anecdotal comments or sidebars. That doesn't help us in any way. It allows us to grow on the basis of trajectory. We have American Airlines that has been flying 5 days a week. We're pleased to announce yesterday that effective September 1, American Airlines will be flying daily, twice on Saturdays, and later in the year, 3 times on Saturdays. JetBlue is ramping up capacity. All of the other airlines are expanding capacity, even if not in number of flights, and we are growing. That will help the Grantley Adams International Airport to boost its performance and to be even more attractive to a concessionaire. So it is on this basis, Mr. President, that we have every confidence that this body of legislation, that this act, that bill that is before this honorable place is an important body of work. It is going to set the trajectory for a new growth agenda for aviation in Barbados, not specifically the Grantley Adams on its own, and it will enable us to continue the engagement with the potential bidders, 13 of them, when we meet with them at the end of July. And with these few words, Mr. President, I commend this bill to this honorable House, and I beg to move that this bill be read a second time.
Thank you, Senator Cumming. Senator Franklin.
Thank you, Mr. President. I won't be too long. I don't know what is happening, and I think I should. I am a senator in this country, and I even know what the government is doing in relation to our asset at the airport, our asset, the Grantley Adams International Airport. And I don't think most other people in this country do. Government must let the people of this country into its confidence and just don't go and rush off there and go and have all these PPPs and giveaways and whatever else they're having. They did it with Kiev, they did it with the airport now, and these are not manifesto items, you know. Not that I can recall. Mind you, I didn't do a careful study of the manifesto. But government should be working toward this manifesto. And all of a sudden, not have harebrained schemes and rush in there and do all these things. So I'm asking, who are we giving the airport to operate? And why? We had the Grantley Adams International Airport as a government department some years ago. Government, in its wisdom, decided that it should be run not by a statutory board, but by a company formed under the Companies Act. And we were hearing great things about the airport and what it can do and what it is doing. Has the Grantley Adams International Airport failed to live up to its expectations? And that is why, is that why now we are changing? Because I can understand if you try something and you fail, but if it has failed, how come you want to tell me nothing? How come the country doesn't know that the people up at the airport messing up? So you have to find an alternative to run the airport because what we have put in place is not working out. And if it is working out, why are we changing it? These are questions that you must, are things that you must explain to the country before you just go and take about assets and flutter them away and give them to whosoever will. I don't know who. I don't know why. And these things are relevant. The people of this country owns that airport. And if you give away something belonging to me, at least let me know why you're giving it away. At least bring me on board with your plans for our assets. You know, like they gave, the last government gave away, they call it soul, but gave away Light and Power. And you see how that turned out after a little storm here, the other day. I have never seen such a mess. We gave it up. We didn't take any control over it. We had oversight, so we thought. But some people out there still suffering. Right now, look at me. I don't have any internet. I had to come here yesterday to get my part of my papers for Senate money from the Senate was meeting. Because, of course, I understand now that I get close to the internet and I log on to somebody else's account. I realize that you sent me emails ever since. But home, the office, no internet. So I didn't know you were meeting. And all that is because of Light and Power and the other companies that too long. I had to come here yesterday and collect papers and go home and scramble to see what I could do something about this, and that cost me last night to be stable. If you see me doors in the head, that's because I was up last night reading these things. And I even prepared for the defense first thing, and I ain't coming. So, sir, so are we going to give away our airport again in light of the bad examples that we have had with Public Bank? Now we're hearing everybody saying, oh, we should have our own national bank. And the one world, the credit unions, and the credit unions set up one so that they can have a local bank. When we had one, we gave it away. We gotta stop doing this foolishness, you know. And if you're gonna do this with the country's assets, they belong to you, they belong to the government, individuals, it belongs to the people of Barbados, and we should be consulted about what you are doing for us. You know, like, I'm going to just touch on another piece of legislation that's coming up now, but these light bulbs. I think it's desirable. But you don't jump on the people and just throw it in so and tell them this is what we're going to do. You should be talking to the people. You should be talking to people about this. You are doing too many things and not bringing the people into your confidence. You are not a dictatorship. But sorry, sir, I shan't say that. You should not be a dictatorship. Because that's what's happening. Look, we are not little children that you have to do things for us and tell me when you ask why, it's for your own good. You don't think we should know why the airport is being transferred? And if the systems that we put in place didn't work, we should know that too. So we have all kinds of talent in Barbados. We have young people in Barbados go and study everything in Barbados, all over the place, go over the world, and come back to Barbados and can't find jobs. And you know why? Because we're giving the jobs to people from overseas. We're giving them, I don't know if they're friends, family, neighbors, I don't know who they are, but you think we ain't got talent in Barbados? That we got to go and find somebody else and give our assets to run, to manage? We ain't got the skills? So how are you going to develop this country when people do all kinds of studying, all manner of subjects, and then they can't find work because we are giving the work to non-nationals to bring their friends and family from overseas and to lord over us? Leave us in a situation like we used to be as slaves when the plantation owners come in their fancy suits and sit down and watch us work. Because we can still do the work. We are going to be doing the work. So we know what to do. We know how to do it. But we must have a Lord and Master imposed on us because we need people to govern us. We ain't independent yet. We got to stop this nonsense. Now you hear the minister talking about we are, I wrote it down, protection of labor. I have not seen any time where the government has privatized anything in Barbados, privatized or corporatized anything where labor was protected. They say in the legislation when they're doing these things that you will be employed under no less favorable terms. Sounds nice. But then when it actually happens, like for instance, give me an example of the same airport. The airport people were civil servants. You came up with Grantley Adams International Airport, Inc. And you said your terms and conditions would be the same, or under no less favorable. As a civil servant, you had 14 days sick leave if you were temporary, and 21 days if you were permanent. They now become 6. That can be no less favorable. And when the airport workers cried out about it, they were ignored. In those days, unity was not in place, or not we would have had a battle. But that's just one example. Then people are fired left, right, and center for minor things. You have some people who were consultants in the private sector, labor relations consultants, and you hire them as HR people in these entities, and they come in there and they do what they learn in textbooks without any humanity whatsoever. That happened at the airport. I saw it. I had to put my foot down when I worked at another place, and they even threatened that I would not be able to come back at the airport. I give a little story. They claimed that I went to the airport. They lied on me. They said that I used abusive language at the meeting. And they complained to the union and said, "Go to one, get rid of me," because I was standing up. And they said that but when I went into the meeting, somebody had given me a brand new recording device. And I thought I knew how to operate this device. And I turned it on and put it in my pocket. Of course, now I got a recording device going, so you know I can abuse. So when they said so, and they said that they don't want me back at the airport and all kind of stuff, I said, now suppose I told you that I had this in my pocket all along. Because the general secretary was there now trying to save my skin. And they then backed down and said, oh, we must have been mistaken. I said, no, you didn't mistake. You tell lies for me, I want to have my thing. And the general says, okay. We apologize, we get finished, we don't need to hear that. So I go outside and I turn on my recorder and I hear psh, 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 psh. I didn't know how to operate anything. It was new. But there's a problem. They do everything possible to hurt workers, even to destroy their representatives. And that is basically what happens in these statutory corporations and these government entities. They take away your rights that you had as a civil servant and replace them with a lot of wrongs. So if you're going to protect labor, I challenge you to, because it has not happened so far. Hospital, Grantley Adams International Airport, you name it, workers' rights were not protected. They tell me, when they see me, at the hospital in particular, I so sorry I listened to you, because there's a hellhole out there when it comes to employment practices. So I hope, as you said, that you're going to be protecting labor, because it has not happened so far. And quite frankly, this government is not known for protecting labor. You're known for protecting a certain Annie. Can he? So I said, I'm not going to be long, and I don't want to be long, but I want to find out why we're doing this, who we're doing it for, because it certainly is not for the people of Barbados. And I heard you speaking about Category 1 status. We're going to attempt to get Category 1 status. We could have had it except for the malpractices going on at the airport, where you allow people don't know that they're security. They call it the American place, the something or other, the federal agency that oversees air travel. They send inspectors to Barbados and watch our people avoiding scanners, coming through customs and things, but don't get checked. And that is those are the reasons why when we get bad reports, the United States won't allow us to have Category 1 status. So I think it got nothing to do with us, really. The ability of the people at the airport, it has everything to do with the fact that we are not doing the things that we are supposed to do to get that type of status, because we still operate like a banana republic. You have certain issues. Go to the airport now, go to the harbor now. There's a category of persons who avoid scrutiny by security people because they think they're bigger. And then so the guns is coming to Barbados. 2, because you know that when they get searched, you bring a gun. Every man that passed through the airport, up to and including the Prime Minister, should have their bags checked. And I can tell you why. If you, sir, it is known that you are not subject to security checks, your luggage is not checked because of who you are.
Mine is though, I am subject to
That's what I'm
security.
telling you. If they say that,
I didn't want listeners to think that you.
no. I know that yours is checked, and I know that you will insist that it is checked. I am a criminal fellow, and I want to get something in. I pass by your house, and I give you a call overseas and tell you that when you come, somebody will bring a gun for you, and somebody will be home at your house. So I bring through the gun. But home at your house because you're away from home. So when you do that, you put your family and everything at risk because you want to be big. You want to be bigger. But it's not security. Every man jack that walks through there should be subject to security checks. But we have these special people who think that they are above scrutiny. I go to buildings in Barbados. One building in particular, I go to have meetings. And all along I used to be checked. Then I became a senator. So I never thought that meant that I shouldn't get checked. So I put my bag on the scanner, and the 25 said, "No, sir, you don't have to get checked." I said, "Why not?" He said, "You're a senator." I said, "I know that, but I said, "Should get checked." If fellow won't search your bag, because they're not supposed to. I said, "But you're putting me and my family in danger when you don't check this thing." But the boy listened to me. Every man that walks into that building, coming from outside, should be checked. If you can check one, check all. But this is what we're having. So, and that security thing is security at the airport going to be part of this new dispensation. The security officer is not going to be asked to leave the service of Gaia Inc. and work for this new entity, or they will be continuing to be working for the government of Barbados. Because if they are, I would want their servants' pay. I want to repeat, if you are going to give them new contracts with this new entity, you're going to pay them out. I don't want a situation where the company then reneges on paying them and something down the road they can't get anything. Government must look to protect the workers of this country from the people we bring here. They come in to talk all kind of fancy stuff. We give a hotel all the concessions in the world. I said we mean Barbados. And that place is a hellhole for workers. Everything that we do, workers are suffering as a result. Treat them very badly. They're frightened to join unions. They tell them they can't join unions. In Barbados, you know. Mind you, they come and join with me and don't want me to say anything until something happens. But they want protection. But if they get found out, this is happening in Barbados, if they get found out, they can lose their job. This is a crime in Barbados, you know. If you dismiss somebody because they become a member of a union, that is a criminal offense. Section 40A, Trade Union Act, check it out. But we don't, when we have these agreements and we have all these fancy things, we do not work in anything to do with protection of workers. So if you're going to give away our airport to these entities, or whoever you're going to give it to, make sure you protect. I can't stop you. I would like to, but I can't. So all I can do is to appeal to you to do the right thing by the workers of this country when you set about giving away the airport. I don't understand why. Barbadians too dumb.
Just for the accuracy of the record, Senator Franklin, your use of giveaway in the colloquial sense in a bill, which is a transfer and vesting bill, transfer and management bill, is mixing the colloquial and the formal, which could have some confusing impact on the listeners in the general public. I would urge you not to use giveaway in that sense, because this is as the matter said, this is assigning operations and so on. You know it's not given away. And I know that you know that in the formal sense it's not given away. Please, as this is a transfer and management act, use formal language when discussing the nature of the relationship between Grantley Adams International Airport, Inc. and whomever is chosen as the operator. It is a management arrangement. It is not a giveaway. And I know you mean well, but for the sanctity and clarity of the record, you will want to amend your language.
I am guided by you, sir, and I thank you for the correction. You are transferring the management of the airport to some other entity.
Indeed.
So that you're not giving away the airport for sale. You're not saying, here, take the airport and go away. I can't go away.
That's right.
The airport going to be there, unless we got some nuclear strike. The airport will remain there. The problem that we are talking about is handing over the operations of the airport to somebody else. The management of the airport to somebody else.
Right.
Oh, we don't have any managers in Barbados that can handle that. Our people are so dumb that we got to go and find somebody else to do it. We had a gentleman in Barbados that when the airport was open in St. Vincent, a Barbadian fellow that chose a Barbadian fellow to run it. He's not at the airport, no, mind you, running ours. But if other people can recognize our abilities, why can't the government recognize the ability of Barbadians? You know, I understand. A prophet is not without honor in his own land. But that was Reverend gone, the Bishop gone. Why are we doing this? Are our people so, you said dumb, that we can't handle our own, can't run the airport? They give me a 6-month course, then let me go and learn. You're going to get me, sorry, sir. You're going to transfer the thing for 30 years? No, if you think that we need to have something like what you're planning and all these services that you want to provide and we don't know how to do them, there's something called training. Train some of our locals then. Give them the necessary skills. You don't park the airport out of our reach for 30 years. You know, by the time 30 years from now, God knows I'm going to be here. I would like to see my Barbadians know or will be allowed to run it. Because you're bringing people from overseas. And you already know who you're going to deal with. I don't think you want the tender.
Mr. President, I want to rise on a point of order. I think we've gone a bit far. Mr. President, the Honorable Senator is misleading the House. Mr. President, we went out to tender. It was published. It was spoken about in this Honorable House. I'm not sure if the Honorable Senator was out of his chair, but if that is the case, accept that it was publicly noted and registered in this House, in every major newspaper, and in the other place, and in here. And it is unfortunate that the Honorable Member continues to use inflammatory language for the purpose of procuring membership. But this, perhaps, Mr. President, is most unfortunate, that he's attempting to mislead not just this House, but the public, by insisting that he's questioning a tender process that was done publicly, and I believe that he knows it. I may be wrong, but I believe he knows it.
Thank you, Senator Cummins. Senator Franklin.
Sir, when some person raises on a point of order, and then when they're doing their point of order, becomes offensive, you should really talk to them, Because I'm not doing anything with membership. Right now, my membership is growing, because the other place is hemorrhaging and sending members over by me, so I can't control them now. So it isn't a question of meeting. I generally do not know. I want to understand what you're doing. If you had this in your manifesto, I would, and you have these things that should be manifesto promises, you're rushing and doing them suddenly, spraying them on the people. If the people of Barbados knew what you were planning to do with a lot of the things that you're doing now, then you get all those votes. If the people in St. Thomas knew that you're going to take away the cave and give it away to another entity, you didn't get them votes in St. Thomas as you would. Because let me tell you something.
Senator Franklin, as I indicated earlier, the matter, both with the matter with the cave as well as with the airport, well, certainly the cave, the legislation has been passed, all the arrangements are public. It is not a giveaway. And I would not allow the language to stand for fear that in a formal debate on a transfer and management bill, the use of the words giveaway by the leading spokesman for the opposition and highly knowledgeable in these matters could be taken as a serious and accurate statement when it is not. You know better, Senator Franklin.
Sir?
You'll want to withdraw that and speak to the matter of the caves, for example, in its proper context. The caves is still very much owned by the government of Barbados and managed, I believe, by Chuka or whatever the company is called. So let's keep it on that formal level, please.
Yes, thank you, sir. If you ask me to withdraw, I will. But the caves are not owned by the government of Barbados, owned by the people who live on top of the caves, and government took them away and then compensate them yet. Because when you own property, your property is owned from the center of the earth to the sky, and everything in between is yours. So when you go under my house and develop a cave, part of that cave belongs to me, and the government has not compensated those people to this day. But you take it and you transfer management, whether to Chaka or whoever you want to transfer it to, without making those people right. When you dig for petroleum in Barbados, you put down a well. The well is on a particular point, but people in a wide area around that well get what they call petroleum quota payments because the oil is coming from their land. It's under their land, so they get paid for it. So how come you could go under my house, develop a cave, and don't give me anything? And the people of St. Thomas have not, I'm not running for St. Thomas, sir. The people of St. Thomas have not gotten a single cent when government took up their land and used it. But you can take it and transfer the management functions and whatever else, and do whatever kind of fancy things you're doing, we develop some more. But those people up to this day have not gotten a site. It's theirs. There's not been when you compulsory acquire, you don't when you compulsory acquire land, you also compulsory acquire the piece underneath. But the people who live on top, that you didn't take away land, they're still living on top. the land still belong to them. You own sky, the center of the earth. And I suspect that the cave is somewhere between the center of the earth and those people's foundations. But that is beside the point. What I'm trying to say to you is that we do things in this country and we do not announce them first. These major issues should be manifesto issues. You come to the country with a plan to run this country, and when you get in, you have this epiphany. Oh, we could do this. Oh, we could do next. Stick your manifesto, and if you want to come back for another mandate. But you're not doing that. You are doing what you feel you can do because you have the power. But the power comes from the people. And you tell the people, this is what we are going to do for you in the next 5 years. Show me in your manifesto where you are doing all of these things that you plan to do. Except for COVID now, because nobody had the plans for that. That was an emergency. But when you're going to take deliberate steps, like transfer the management of the airport to have all these kind of fancy things, then we should know about it before you came to the people and talk about you advertising and all kind of thing. Advertising what? You jump the people with it. Mr. President, I still want answers. I want to know why. I want to know who going to get the benefits, and if Grantley Adams International Airport Inc. has failed, and if they have failed, why we have not been told. Those are the things I would like to know, because if they're working well, why take it away from them? Why get them to transfer the man to somebody else if they're doing it well? And I understand that the airport was being managed well, or people were fooling me. So, sir, I will say no more, just that I want answers. I want answers to those questions. Who, why? Government must subject itself to the people. I thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, Senator Franklin. Senator McConney.
Mr. President, I beg to move that that we now suspend until 2:45 for lunch. I beg to move that we do now suspend until 2:45 for lunch.
The question is that this sitting be suspended until 2:45 p.m. today. Those honorable senators in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it. This sitting is now suspended until 2:45 today.